The What's Neat This Week video podcast is supported by enthusiastic model railroaders just like you. Additional support is provided by Athearn Trains. Check out all their new monthly announcements at athearn.com. And by Intermountain Railway Company, where the detail makes the difference. Check out their website at intermountain-railway.com. The National Model Railroad Association, where membership has its benefits. Check out their website at nmra.org.
Additional support for What's Neat This Week is brought to you by SoundTraxx, industry leaders in model railroad sound and technology for over 30 years. Now please visit our website at soundtraxx.com, and at checkout, be sure to use the promo code WNTW15 for 15% off of your purchases. And while you're there, be sure to check out our YouTube channel and other information that we have on our website to help you get more familiar with Model Railroader Reader's Choice Award winner 2 times for Favorite Sound Decoder.
Additional support is provided by TCS, Train Control Systems. Check out their high-quality DCC sound decoders, throttles, accessories, and more at tcsdcc.com. Further support is provided by the NCE Corporation, the power of DCC. Visit their website at ncedcc.com. And thank you for supporting the What's Neat This Week podcast. This is the What's Neat This Week show number 130 for September 19th, 2020. I'm your host, Ken Patterson, the host of the What's Neat show at Model Railroad Hobbyist Magazine. And what a great show we had last week with Joe Fugate on. That was really great. And yes, a lot of folks have discovered the numbers on his magazine numbers. He spiked this week. So nice. A lot of people evidently didn't know, and that was the point of the show, was to introduce people to an online magazine, and I'm glad that we did that. We wish everybody out there the best of luck with the fires and everything out there. This week has been absolutely fabulous in Missouri, weather-wise. Today I went outside and I shot some photographs, and I'm going to start with the eye candy right away. This week today I shot these pictures of these beautiful Intermountain Trinity Illuminator coal gondolas. Ooh, and the weather was just starting with CITX number 400,125. This is a Capital Finance hopper car. Mm-hmm. Also, I had another one that I shot outside was GEAX, and that is Transcisco Leasing, and that's the car that's got the yellow end on it, number 1032. The last car that I shot outside was LUSX, number 4754. That's Luss car, and that's got the blue ends on it. A Johnstown Aeroflow 2 coal gondola with smooth sides. And I was so excited, I just had to talk about that right away. Right. Because the weather, again, has been fantastic, and I love it when I get to go outside and shoot photographs of these. I also shot top shots of every one of these. If you look into the bays of these gondolas, the different bracing on each car is a little bit different. The number count of the braces was different. And also I shot bottom shots of these cars, which you usually do that when you got all the really great brake detail. Mm-hmm. But the paint schemes underneath these cars were different too. So hats off to InterMountain. These are in the value lines of trains. Now, without further ado, I've got to do an introduction of who we got on camera and on the show tonight. First of all, in Skype land, I've got the amazing, very well-known Tony Koester, model railroader for over 50 years. Tony, welcome to the show tonight.
Thank you very much. Good to be here.
Also, I've got James Regier.
Hi, everybody.
Wearing the Santa Fe mask. And I've got Sugar Fire Joshua Barton.
Hello, hello.
We've got a bunch of folks down here watching us record the show tonight, guys. Thank you for being here. I know Campbell Rice shot some amazing drone footage and shot me a really beautiful photograph of the house. Can I just show that to him?
Absolutely.
This has got Illinois in the background. It was really cool. He also shot a sunset picture during the sunset, and it's amazing how the sun is so diffused by the smoke.
Right.
And this shot of the sunset was shot over 3,000 feet away, pointing back at the house. It was absolutely amazing. And we've got...
quite a range that thing has.
Daniel Coombs, thank you very much for bringing wings last week. He's running camera for us this evening. You do such a great job on camera. I really appreciate it. One last thing I've got on my list to talk about right away as I launch into talking about spray booths. And that's a device that you use to suck the air outside of your house when you're painting. It's really important to do that. Not only do you wear a mask or a ventilator when you paint or airbrush, but I created the spray booth many, many years ago. And it was featured on a What's Neat show at one point, probably around 2013, the first year doing that show. But this week I did something different. I used to have the spray booth motor outside. And the reason for that was it made the basement quieter and it allowed us to suck the air out of the room. Therefore, if somebody was smoking a cigarette and my pipe had a hole in it, it wouldn't be actually getting the fumes of the cigarette smoke inside the house by sucking it out with the motor outside. Well, upon you guys seeing that new window get put in last week, I moved the spray booth motor back inside the house and mounted it directly to the back of the spray booth. And it was a 600 cubic feet per minute squirrel cage blower. It's much easier to maintain with it inside because you can clean out the fins, which is really important to have good airflow when you're painting, because those fins, believe it or not, those concaved fins, they actually get paint buildup or dust buildup on them, and the ventilation is actually reduced. So now it blows the air outside, so there will be no more smoking cigarettes in the spray booth area, because you know, if it blows it and there's a hole in the pipe, you're going to get just a little bit of smoke in the room, and we don't want that. Plus, we all quit smoking cigarettes anyway, which is great. And that's all I've got on my list to open up the show with. Now, Tony, I don't need to introduce you. You are so well known. You have been publishing model railroad planning.
Correct.
And
Yes.
How many years have you been publishing that? That is such an amazing amount of information every year in this yearly periodical about designing layouts.
We started that in 1995, so it's been cranking along for about 25 years or so.
Wow.
It was an idea that they had at Kalmbach, and Jim Kelly, who was MR's managing editor, was going to be the editor, but he got promoted to managing editor about that time, and anybody who knows magazines knows that managing editors don't have any time. They're the busiest guy on the planet.
Sure.
So about that time, I got wind that they were doing some talking to dealers about a new magazine, and so Doug Gurin got wind of that through the layout design sig, and he called me up, and I called Kalmbach and talked to Andy Sprandio, and I said, I don't know what you're up to, but I'd kind of like to have a piece of this. And he said, well, the funny thing is your name came up, because I'd been editor of Railroad Model Craftsman for 12 years, so they knew I knew stuff like this. And so as a result of all that stuff, I wound up as the founding editor of Model Railroad Planning, and it's been a nice ride ever since.
That's
Very
amazing.
cool.
Tony, I saw you in an Alan Keller video once, and I was in Huntsville, Alabama. I went to a hobby shop and I bought the video from a hobby shop, and I played it for my wife's father-in-law and her mother at the time, and they've never seen a model railroad video before, and it was the first time that they got to see the Alan Keller video where you were featured in that video with your layout. And there's one quote out of that video that I remembered and never forgot, and I say it all the time on this podcast. You were the one that coined the phrase that this is the best hobby in the world.
I didn't even remember saying that, but I'm. I said some other things on there that I probably wish I hadn't.
Don't we all?
About some of the leading guys in the hobby, Alan Mclaughlin, Chuck Hitchcock, and those guys, and I said, they're just smart people. But where do you go with that? In other words, you can't be a good model railroader unless you're smart. So I kind of went down a blind alley with that. But other than that, it was a fun video to do. When I look back at it, and I do run that every so often, I got a machine that will run those old tapes. And
That's right.
it's a little embarrassing. I mean, that's technology dating back to the 60s. But getting ready for this program, I was looking at the number of slides of the Allegheny Midland. And for the first time in a long time, I really missed that railroad. The railroad had a lot of operating potential. There was all kinds of neat stuff to do on that railroad. And it was kind of a trip down memory lane, and I kind of miss it now.
You sent us about 14 different photographs. Would you like to walk us through some of these photographs and tell us about your memory lane?
Well, first thing I got to admit is it's kind of a trip down plagiarism lane because thanks to the NMRA, I met Alan Mclaughlin in September of 1971, I think it was, or 1970 maybe, at a regional in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And the NMRA, that's one of the things about the NMRA membership that's such a treat, is that it's a social platform to meet other people. Now, right now, it's a little difficult to do that, as Josh and James are demonstrating with the masks on, but under normal circumstances, we'll get back to them soon. It's a wonderful place to meet people. And when I went to Railroad Model Craftsman in 1969, the first thing I did was to look at the assets that they had. And one of the assets they had was Alan Mclaughlin wrote for Railroad Model Craftsman. And so the first thing I did was contacted Alan and said, hey, Jim Boyd and I, Jim was a good friend of mine still in Illinois. He didn't join the staff until 1971, but Jim and I were pretty well attuned to what Alan was doing. He was doing a lot with very plain things, Athearn F7s painted a dip blue paint scheme, but that's the way the B&O was painting their F7, so what the heck? And we thought he was doing something special, so I got a chance to meet Alan in 1970, and I went out and had a chance to operate on the V&O. First time I'd ever operated on a realistic model railroad. But the thing about the V&O was when you looked at it up close and piece by piece by piece, you came away with a feeling that you could do that if you just paid attention. And so I looked at it carefully, and the trees were lichen. We didn't even coat them with foam in those days. And I asked him about how you hand lay a turnout, and he explained it, and I thought, well, that looks pretty easy. So in 1973, when we actually built our home that I'm sitting in right now, I was well equipped with the how-to that I needed to build a railroad. And about the only successful track plan I think I've ever drawn was the Allegheny Midland. When I tried to draw a track plan for the nickel plate, I blew it and had to go to Frank Odina to get a decent track plan. But the Allegheny Midland was a pretty decent track plan, and so I hand-laid all the track and did all those kind of things, but it was based on the Virginia and Ohio.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
It was pretty hard to lose. I mean, you had the V&O laid out there, and it was successful. And if you just didn't screw it up, if you just paid attention to what Alan did, it was going to work out. And the nickel plate's kind of the same thing that Bill Darnaby had shown. Even though it was freelance, he'd shown that if you paid attention and did a multi-deck railroad, you could get a long main line, single track, operated with timetable and train order, so you had the town spaced well apart, a lot of places to meet trains, so I could go home if I didn't screw that up, which my first plan did, but Frank Odina straightened that right out. Again, plagiarism is our most important product. I didn't have to invent anything. I didn't have to reinvent the wheel. I just had to build on friendships and NMRA camaraderie, and it worked out pretty well.
It did. The V&O was such an influential layout. I remember sitting in this very basement looking. There was actually a book, and I think Model Railroad Craftsman had published the book on the V&O, and I still have that book in my library. And he had the red paint scheme, and he had the blue locomotive paint schemes. And it's influential today for so many people that do freelance prototype railroads. Greg Mccomas that we had on a show just about 5 weeks ago.
Sure.
Same type of prototype freelance. It's very realistic. But back then, that was unheard of. I mean, the only thing we had prior to that was the Gore Undefeated with John Allen doing the same prototype freelancing like that.
Yes, Alan we've always seemed to have been on the same wavelength. In the early 70s, after we started working together on several articles, I called him up and I said, you know, what I'd like to do is dissect a model railroad from alpha to omega and start talking about it from the design, the conception part to the design part to the construction part, go all the way through it from A to Z. And he said, I was thinking the same thing. So that's how the V&O story was done in RMC. And the book was nothing more than the RMC series put in between soft covers.
Mm-hmm.
That's amazing. Now, the Allegheny Midland Railroad that you had built, again, you sent us a lot of photographs on it. Would you like to describe that layout to us? And I'll run these pictures while you talk about it, Tony.
Well, the Allegheny Midland was a two-division railroad. The north half that I didn't model was the Wheeling division. It connected with the nickel plate near Wheeling, West Virginia, and it extended down through West Virginia to connection with the Virginia and Ohio near Kingswood Junction, which is down around Mountain Grove, which is a real place, Virginia.
Mm-hmm.
And so that gave me the best of both worlds. I could connect my favorite nickel plate road, which I grew up on as a kid, with my favorite prototype freelance railroad, the Virginia and Ohio. And I modeled the south half of it to model the part that connected with the Virginia and Ohio, and that was the Appalachian Division, or Appalachian Division when you're down in that part of the country is the way it's pronounced. And it started out as the plan was to have it as a steam railroad that hauled coal north, which is called lake coal because it's delivered to the Great Lakes area, to steel mills and power plants. And it hauled tide coal, which goes down to tidewater, and it gets there by delivering it to the Virginia and Ohio, who hands it off to the Chesapeake and Ohio, and they deliver it on down to Newport News. And so it was pretty much a coal hauling railroad, and there's pictures in there that show it switching various coal tipples, and there's a picture there at Big Springs, West Virginia, of a big coal preparation plant. It shows the Otter Creek shifter with a 2662 I3 Malley, which is a compound steam engine, uses steam twice, switch big preparation plant. And there's other pictures of the Otter Creek shifter switching at Big Springs Junction, where the coal branch, the Otter Creek branch, leaves the main line, switching a tipple there as a freight or as a coal extra goes by with tide coal headed south over the railroad. There's pictures after I extended the railroad from the railroad room after the kids were grown and gone. I had taken 30 feet of the basement for the Allegheny Midland, which left 20 feet as a family room. But after the kids were grown and gone, we didn't need the family room. So, the imperialist Kester took over the rest of the basement.
That's right.
Oh, sure, yeah.
And Judy didn't want to be down there by herself anyway. So that was the coal fork extension, which was described in a series in Model Railroader. And there were several coal tipples on there at Low Gap and a coal fork, and I have included pictures there that you can share with your viewers. And so that gave us all kinds of coal that was coming down out of the mountains on the coal fork extension to the Otter Creek subdivision and out of that big prep plant at Big Springs. So you had all that coal flowing down to Big Springs Junction, and some of it then, all of it flowed down the mountain to South Fork, which was a suburb of Midland, West Virginia. And there's pictures there of the big engine terminal and the big yard there and the dispatcher's office and stuff. All of that was at South Fork, just south of Midland. And some of it then was classified to go north. And it was river grade from that point north. So you had engines that were just, like Berkshires that could haul stuff northbound out of there. But if you were going south up the mountains, you had to have some more powerful mountain type engines. Mm-hmm. Very much what happened to CNO at Hinton, West Virginia, where the mountain and river engines swapped jobs. So that's pretty much what was going on with the railroad as far as operations is concerned. There was also 2 passenger trains that ran over the railroad. One of the neater aspects of it was that Dayton, Ohio, and Newton, New Jersey are both in the same time zone, Eastern time zone. And so by operating on Friday night from 8 to midnight, which when we were younger sounded like a good idea, right? Any of us could stay up till midnight. But we operated 8 to midnight. We could operate our railroads the same night at the same time. And so we could coordinate the movements of the 2 passenger trains. And there were 4 hot shots. There was the 261 and 262, which was the Florida Perishable and the Hot Rod. And there were 2 other hot trains that we ran. And we didn't allow, in other words, a train coming north off the V&O, one of those hot shots or passenger trains, until the V&O dispatcher called me to tell me that his train had gone into staging. He just called me long distance, which is a few bucks a month, no big deal, not less I spent on soft pretzel.
So 2 layouts operating like basically on a coordinated schedule, like. Yep. Yeah, wow, that's impressive. That's a whole new level.
That's very cool. Tony, how many people could you have operate on your layout at one time?
There was on both railroads, there was about 16 to 20 people that ran the railroad.
Wow.
And
okay.
We were finding slowly but surely on our railroads, there's quite a few railroads now in this area that operated. When the Allegheny Midland was running, it was about the only one. And then the late Harold Worth one got his Big Erie Railroad running. He could run 20 to 30 people, I think. It was a monster.
Oh, wow.
But now there's probably 6, 8 railroads in the area that are operating. And we're finding, though, that sometimes when we're kind of hurting for crews, like in the summer when everybody's on vacation,
sure,
that when we're shorthanded, quite often the operating sessions are better because you don't have people standing around. Everybody's busy. So I got to tell you one quick story about this dispatching by telephone, though. You assumed if the phone rang, it was the V&O dispatcher. And when the phone rang, I picked it up one night and said, "Dispatcher's office." It was dead quiet. And then there was this, "Tony?" And hi.
How about that? Tony,
Wow.
I see you've got an NMRA shirt on, and I want to talk about the benefits of the organization. I know the insurance is a big one, but before I do that, I've got some micro-engineering bridges on the table, and these are the same through girder bridges that I had on the show last week, but I called them the wrong thing. I've got the 50-foot single track and double track, but the other one is not an 85-foot long bridge.
No,
they
it's-
corrected me on that this week. This is a 100-foot bridge. Double
Right.
track and single track. And the important reason that I want to bring these bridges up, and I did last week on the show, was it's so important when you're planning your layout and you're designing your layout and you're coming up with your concept to know what's out there and what's available. Because this can
Sure.
be the whole difference between a creek and a highway underpass.
Right.
And so that's something I wanted to bring up. Last week I didn't talk about all the rivet detail, but it's there, and the track detail. Also on the table tonight from Athearn Trains, I've got an Amtrak locomotive that I have not talked about yet. Do you remember about 4 weeks ago I talked about all of the Santa
Yeah.
Fe yellow bonnets?
Right, the STP-40F.
That's correct.
I believe that's a Santa Fe classification for it. I think it was the P40F under Amtrak service.
Well, this is the way they looked before Santa Fe got them. And this one's in the candy stripe. And this is also listed in inventory right now at the Athearn website at athearntrains.com. My favorite ones are, of course, the pointed arrows. Those I remember watching pull out of Union Station here in St. Louis in 1973. I would
Right.
take the bus from my home out here all the way downtown, bring my grandma with me, and we were walking around the train station. I had to see those pointless arrows coming out of the train shed, and I did. It was absolutely amazing. And before I continue any further along, James Regier, you've got some exciting news from TCS that I think you need to talk about. That's Train Control Systems. they've got something really cool that I had no idea about that you're going to tell us about.
Yeah, well, TCS has come out with a new version of their UWT 100 throttle. And now you can run multiple trains at once with the throttle, and each train can have its own consist. Remember, we talked about how they can consist intelligently so that the throttle actually controls each of the locomotives separately, so you don't have to worry about deconsisting them later on.
Now, wait a minute. I got my TCS throttle, and when I got it, it couldn't run 2 trains at the same time. So how do I change it so it can?
Well, right. I'm sure a lot of you are grumbling because they just bought the throttle and, now it's out of date. But wait. TCS has actually come out with their depot system, which is a software that you can download, currently available for Windows. And with that depot system, you can update their throttle. You will eventually be able to update their upcoming version 5.0 decoders for whatever they come up with later on. And when they eventually come out with their full DCC control system, you'll be able to update that and upgrade it too.
And that works through the Wi-Fi?
It works through Wi-Fi.
Wow.
And it's actually pretty intuitive. You got to remember, once you download this software, and it's available at tcsdcc.com for download. Right now it's only for PC, but they're going to be coming up with Macintosh and Unix versions of it. So you can do it with whatever operating system as soon as they come out with it. And once you download this, your throttles are future-proof.
Okay, so walk me through the process, because we videotaped a screen capture, and I also got video clips of you doing this, updating a throttle. Tell us how that worked.
The first all-important step, you open this software and you log in with your TCS DCC ID account. Right. Once you are logged in, then you make sure that your throttle is on the same Wi-Fi network as your laptop. And in your case, because you're running on a different system than you run your layout on for your Wi-Fi, we had to just make sure that we were on that same system.
Okay.
And you do that by powering up your throttle and going through the Wi-Fi search. And it'll find the settings in your house and you can put in your password.
Okay.
Once you have that established, then you can power off your throttle, you power it on again, but instead of pressing 2, you press 7, and that'll put it into the bootloader mode.
Oh.
And then with this software, it'll run you through a checklist of the things you have to do. So now we've set the Wi-Fi.
Right.
We've set it in bootloader mode.
Right.
And then the next item is to upload the software.
Okay.
And it'll automatically find your throttle on the Wi-Fi network, and then the flashlights on top of the throttle will actually start blinking as you see it uploading. And you just watch the bar go up, and then it'll automatically power off and power on again, and then you have the new systems. So it's a really great design that TCS has come up with to help make sure that everything is up to date, and that the latest suggestions that users come up with can in fact be incorporated into these updates in relatively quick fashion.
That's very cool. James, now I use the NCE decoder, or the NCE power cab with my system, and I have the radio-equipped system. Now, will that link straight up with that, or would I have to also have Wi-Fi in my layout room?
You'd want Wi-Fi in your layout room, and that's as simple as plugging in your computer to your NCE system. They have a serial outlet that you can plug your computer into. Or with other systems, you can just use the Wi-Fi off.
So that is completely compatible with the NCE.
Yes, it is.
Completely compatible.
That's
because I've got one of these and I love it. And I've been using this throttle a lot, and I run it with my NCE power system. It also works with my Digitrax system through the LNY.
Yeah.
And I've got some really exciting news. I know Mike is down here tonight. I contacted our buddy, our friend, Chris Palomera, is out of Caboose in Lakewood, Colorado. Hey, Chris. Hey, Chris. And we were going to get Mike the power cab system for his layout.
Correct.
Chris has now changed the rules. We're not going to do that. We're getting him the full-blown Pro Cab system for his layout, because he says he wants to make sure that he's got the 5-amp system on the layout and that he's capable of upgrading and going with radio and the whole system. So
Right.
NCE system, Mike Buddy's down here tonight.
Now, did you see him running his Frisco engines that are DCC?
I saw him doing that.
Did you see that big smile on his face?
I'm telling you, once Daniel goes over to his house and sets up the whole system, Mike, you're going to be able to use this.
Yeah,
Film
I
me
heard-
after this.
I heard Mike saying, and since Mike is right here, I probably shouldn't speak for him, but he was saying the more that he's using this this system, the more he likes it.
Yeah, I'm
That's
pretty
awesome.
excited about it, actually.
I'm
Yeah.
glad you're excited, because I was really worried that you might not really want to get involved with it. But this is going to be a great thing. And can we use your layout as a guinea pig to show how it works and what you like to do? Because at this point, you're just straight DC, right?
Right.
Okay, awesome. Now we're going back out to internet land, out to our wonderful Tony Koester, who's been sitting there so patiently. Thank you, Tony, for playing along with us tonight. But as I said before, there's so many different benefits to the NMRA. They've got this insurance program that also covers clubs, so that if a club layout is set up at a show, in a mall, the liability insurance covers
Sure.
you from disasters and accidents, plus it also covers your personal material at home. They've got the NMRA magazine, and we've talked about the camaraderie and all that, and that the shows, and that the local level shows, and the nationals, and the regionals, and all the various ways that people can exchange information through the NMRA, Tony. Am I pretty much covering everything, Tony, or have I left something out? What's your favorite aspect of the NMRA?
Well, let me just mention a couple other things. Every month in the magazine, which incidentally, the magazine's become something well worth reading. I think that
Yeah.
Priest has done a magnificent job of making.
Absolutely.
Every month there's an Angie's list of our partnership program. You can have a free membership in the NMRA every year simply by going down the partnership program list and finding partners that give discounts to NMRA members. And if you use them wisely, you get enough of the discount to make your membership absolutely free.
There you go.
Yeah.
There's also what I'd call a worldwide social circle. I've almost literally traveled around the world on model railroad functions, to Australia a couple times, New Zealand, all over Europe, the UK. Sometimes it's been just with the NMRA friends, sometimes it's been to NMRA functions, but notice the word NMRA, the term NMRA keeps popping up in these things. I wouldn't even known these people, have known them, if I weren't an NMRA member. I've been a member since 1966. If you look in the records, it shows 69. That's when I went to RMC. There was a month or two lapse, but I actually joined as a Purdue student in 1966. So I've been a member quite a while. I think the last thing that I'll mention here is, and that is that you talked about DCC. Well, Barton Lenz is the one who invented that, but Barton gave the DCC program over to the NMRA to administer and to promote and to advance. And if you're using DCC, and most of us are, there's a lot of other parts, couplers and track gauges, and on and on and on it goes. There's so many standards and recommended practices, and there's millions of volunteer hours that have gone into that over the years. Just think about all the good work the NMRA does, and join with us to make the NMRA a better organization than it is right now. I think it's very good now. I think it's better, it can be better, and I think you're the one who can help us make it better.
Spoken from the heart, Tony.
That's absolutely
You guys
right.
can check out the NMRA by going to nmra.org. I'll run the screen capture right now so you can see the website. And next year it's in California, so look forward to the NMRA National. And 2 years from now it's in St. Louis. Rock and roll. We got the NMRA
That's
show
right.
here in St. Louis, and I'm looking forward to that. The September What's Neat video at Model Road Hobbyist Magazine is out currently right now. And in that video, you can watch our favorite James Bogatuk show us how to set up a programming track for
George
your
Bogatuk.
layout. Did I say James?
Yes.
George Bogatuk. I was thinking James right at the same time. And also, In that video is a 19-year learning curve of garden railroading. As you well know, right after the towers fell in 2001, I started building a garden railroad in the backyard. And I pretty much cover the entire learning curve of that, but we focus on concrete roadbed and how to go about creating a subsurface for your track that's permanent, no matter what size garden railroad you build. So you can find that currently in Model Railroad Hobbyist magazine. The October's What's Neat is finished. I will talk about that on the next show because it'll be coming out just about then. And I'm going to go around the table one more time to make sure we've covered just about everything. I know, James, let's talk about your speakers on the next show.
All right, that's fine.
Tony, I want to thank you so much for being with us this evening. Have we covered everything that you wanted to talk about yet?
Oh, I'm absolutely delighted to be here, and I think we covered all the bases.
You're awesome, Tony. Again, with a great deal of respect that I have for you and all the years in the hobby of how you've influenced so many people.
Huge influence.
It is the best hobby in the world, and I say with the greatest people in it, and Tony is one of those great people.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So with that, I want to thank Joshua Barton, James Regier, Daniel, thank you for running camera. Mike, we're going to get your system all hooked up for you. Guys, this is the best hobby in the world. This is our last show to do this month, and our next show will be in next month.
My birthday, in fact.
Right, so we get next week off. With that, let's go run some trains.
All right.
All right.